Tenz recently gave some constructive criticism about the current state of Valorant, so I thought we'd take a look at it and see whether or not I agree.
My opinion, if you are going into a full ability-based game, and like I do complain about like, oh my god, I get round shot so much, but the reason why I complain so much is because think about back into when Valorant was first introduced. What was the promise into the game? The game was a precise tactical shooter where gunplay reigns supreme and utility helps you elevate your gunplay. It helps you secure kills. Nowadays, the utility kills everyone for you. The utility literally skull your screen, bro. You literally get PTSD from like the amount of util just flying into your sight.
We're making new games, and this one's different. So
wait, the line's coming. The line's coming.
Project A is our character-based tactical shooter. It's competitive. It has precise gunplay.
Okay, precise gunplay. You know what precise gunplay looks like in 2025? This is precise gunplay, by the way. Look at this. Look at this shit. Bro, what's going on? Red, green, blue, dead, orb. Boom.
What?
This is, oh, this round right here. This is, by the way, if I was still a pro player, I knew this was coming. That's also why I'm like, that I'm out. But do you know what happens to a pro player when they're playing this game? This right here. Bro, you see that? The f***ing Power Rangers, bro. Do you see that they used all their f***ing special moves at the same Bro. What's going on? Flying all over. Look at him. This poor dude. What happened to him?
Okay, let's talk about this then, right? So Tenz's main argument seems to be the, the current state of Valorant, util essentially is too strong, right? And is killing people without them even, the gunplay doesn't matter at all because abilities can kill you. And this Jet example is a good example of that, right? Like, if you think about this Jet, if we just play this round back, and, where this Jet starts, right? So the Jet is here, TMV missiles, has to avoid them, right? Has to, get away, dashes away into a grav net. Okay, so now you have to obviously remove the grav net, right? So you get rid of the grav net, but then what's coming at you, you're getting a deadlock wall in a second, and then you're going to get a brim molly and a raise nade, right? So you look at all this, it's like, you're dying to the brim molly, you're dying to the raise nade, you can't move because of the deadlock wall, you previously had to move because of a tail missile, then you had to remove a grav net, right? Like, what was the Jet really meant to do there, right? All that whilst that's happening, never sees a person to shoot back at, right? Because it's just getting bombarded with so much util, can't do anything, right? So I think that clip is a fairly decent example of like, yeah, what are you meant to do, right? That Jet had no reasonable thing to potentially do against that, right? What you would say is, the counter argument to that is, hey, that's good util by the other team, right? They use their util very well there, that other team, right? And everyone's kind of util hitting good positions and made it very difficult for the Jet. And that is kind of an argument to counter this, right? Is that on the one hand, whilst you can agree and it feels very bad for that Jet in that example and supports Tenz's argument, on the other side of the argument, there is also, when you do use good util, you do want to be rewarded for it, right? You do want to gain an advantage from, having good util. And if in this instance, right, like in this instance with the Jet, if everyone has good util like they did here, maybe it is worth a kill. I don't know, right? That's up to you to decide. But let's go back to kind of the initial argument that a lot of people tend to use when they bring up this kind of stuff, which is they go back to that kind of initial video and say, look, this isn't what we were promised, right? This isn't what was meant to happen. One argument I would have against that is, and I would bet probably the Valorant devs probably somewhat regret some of the wording in that video, because very quickly they went against what they said in that video, right? When Raze released, almost instantly the whole argument was gone, right? Because when Raze first released, 2 nades did a ton of damage, the satchels did more damage than they do right now, the boombot did a ton of damage, the ult did a ton more damage than it does right now. Like, Raze killed with every single ability and was very effective at doing so when Raze first came out. So almost instantly, the whole, initial Project A idea kind of thing that they were going for, well, that was gone. Because as soon as Raze released, it was just gone. Now, I think in the current day, right, like this argument we're seeing bubbling up, from Tenz, but others, Safe, I know, has said from Vitality as well, a similar sort of thing. And I think that, honestly, it makes sense for it to happen right now because, of course, Teo's just released, right? And I do think, and, again, it's fitting this Jet clip, right, because it starts with Teo. And this, to me, is where it really all comes back to, is that Teo is has a couple problems in this field, right? Not only does Teo have a very, strong damaging abilities and multiple abilities that can potentially kill you, and so obviously contributes to this quite heavily. Also, of course, is very strong, so you're seeing a ton of Teo if you are a pro player and playing in those games. But not only that, it's very easy to use, right? It's just a little iPad that you put it down on, right? It doesn't take much skill. There isn't a massive skill expression to it. You have to kind of get the timing right, but if you're in a pro team, that shouldn't really be that hard, to be honest. You just drive on it a couple times and you know the timing. So that, I think, is the big problem, right? That Teo has come out and is, 1, very strong, 2, is very easy, and 3, can kill you with multiple abilities as well. So I think that is kind of, pushing this problem quite a lot. And I, in general, do agree, by the way. I'm not trying to disagree here too much with Tenz. In terms of, I do think that, we have probably pushed it a bit too far, and Teo in particular, is pushing it probably a bit too far in one direction, and Teo, I'm sure, will be nerfed, right, and will come back in due course. But for me personally, what I see as Valorant, and throughout the history of the game, and what the devs have done with this game, is that we often go through cycles, right, of the balance of gunplay versus ability usage has gone through a lot of cycles in Valorant's history. Right, where at some points utility has been quite strong, and at other points its utility has been generally quite weak because they've just nerfed it, right? So, for instance, we have seen in the past, remember when they nerfed like Breach and Sky to go from 3 flashes to 2 flashes instead, right? Because they wanted to tone down the utility, and in general we saw, like I mentioned with Raze, right? Toning down of damaging abilities, things like that. We have seen that from the devs before. There was also another time, remember when they made all the ults from like 7 cost to like 8 or 9 cost? Right, that again is them, changing the balance of the gunplay versus the abilities, right? And we have seen that throughout Valorant's history of this cycle of going up and down. And I would say that right now, the reason that you're getting a lot of these arguments is because we're probably towards one of the peaks, right? We're towards a peak, and probably what's coming over the horizon is we're going to probably get a pretty sizable Teo nerf, and maybe some nerfs to some other agents as well, and it's going to come back down. Right, and we're going to come back down to a more manageable level like we have perhaps seen in the past, because maybe right now, it is a bit too high. It's not just Teo, right? We're seeing generally over the past, I would say, 6 to 8 months, 9 months, we've seen more agent buffs than maybe we normally get, right? And not many nerfs. Right, there haven't been a ton of significant nerfs, but there have been quite a few. You think of like, obviously, Neon got buffed, and then it's kind of the one example of maybe a big nerf after the fact, right? But we've seen, quite a significant Phoenix buff. Obviously, Teo and Vice are 2 agents that are good that have come out. We've recently had a pretty significant Deadlock buff. We've had, ISO buffs. Like, we have seen them actually buff quite a lot of agents, more so than perhaps they have done in the past, and probably that is contributing to this as well. However, I think a bigger concern than the damaging side of things is the visual clutter that we actually see in the first clip that Tenz was showing off here. And this, to me, is actually a bigger problem, right? There is a lot on the screen here. You think about like a Breach flash, Reyna flash, you're getting Solver ulted, you've put a wall out there, you can't see anything. There's now an aftershock. Is that my team's aftershock or is that their aftershock, right? Like, there's people on the screen, there's a lot going on. Like this, like visual clutter, and again, if you could see some of the pro perspectives of this, right? Like you're getting flash, stun here, stun there, missile at my feet, need to run, and now there's another flash, like now I'm grav net, like there is a lot going on, for some of these pro players a lot of the time. And so that, I do think it's perhaps an even bigger problem because the visual side of things and like, can you actually tell what's going on, right? And what is what and who is who? That I think is something that perhaps could be looked at a bit more and could be a bit more clearer in the game. And it's probably something that devs do need to look at. So overall, I do agree that the current kind of trend of the game is perhaps a bit too util focused. However, I don't think this is really a time to panic. I don't think it's like necessarily a crazy thing that, will never get solved and some problem that's going to kill Valorant. I think this is just like a natural cycle that Valorant kind of goes through as, we go through a period of, slightly less strong util and a period of slightly stronger util. And right now we're just in the stronger util period that I'm sure in the coming months will probably be nerfed.